You do not have time. I already know that. You have work, kids, appointments, errands, and somewhere in between all of that you have a yard that is quietly making you feel guilty every single time you pull into the driveway. You look at it. You think, I should do something about that. And then life pulls you back inside and nothing ever happens. Here is what I want you to hear right now, in the first 30 seconds of this video, before we go any further. That yard of yours? The one that looks like nobody cares about it? That is not a you problem. That is a plant choice problem. The plants you have been sold, the annuals in the flat trays, the colorful six-packs lined up at eye level every May, the things that look incredible in the store and are half dead by August, those plants were designed to be replaced. Every single year. That replacement cycle is how the garden industry makes money, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what works best in your yard or fits best in your life. Today I am going to show you 12 perennials that break that cycle completely. Not plants that merely survive with less attention. Plants that were shaped by thousands of years of harsh conditions. Drought, poor soil, brutal heat, hard frost, and came out the other side stronger for it. Plants that come back every year without you lifting a finger. Plants that get bigger, better, and more beautiful the longer you leave them alone. And I am going to show you one plant on this list that solves the single most frustrating problem in the busy person's yard. That hot, dry, impossible strip along your driveway or fence line where nothing you have ever tried has made it past August. We will get to that. Stay with me. Drop your US state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now while it is fresh. Just your zone, just your state, whatever you know. It shapes every video I make after this one. I want to know exactly where this community is gardening. Now let us get into it. Plant 1. Hosta. The first plant on this list is hosta. And I want to start here because there is a corner in almost every busy person's yard that has defeated every single plant they have ever put in it. You know the one. Under a tree. Against the north side of the house. A spot that gets maybe 2 hours of filtered light on a good day. You have tried things there. They have not worked. You have quietly given up on that corner ever looking like anything. Hosta is the permanent solution to that problem. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, which covers the vast majority of gardeners watching this video. Once established, a hosta does not ask you for anything. Comes back every spring slightly larger than it was the year before. It forms dense, low mounds of foliage that crowd out weeds so completely you can stop thinking about that bed entirely. The variety I want you to look for is Hosta Patriot. It is a medium-sized variety that grows about 18 to 22 inches wide, perfect for a 12 to 14-inch container or a small garden bed. The leaves are deep forest green with a stark, clean white margin. And what that white edge does in a dark corner is remarkable. It acts like a natural light reflector, visually brightening the space even in deep shade. Here is the detail that will save you money for the rest of your life. After 3 or 4 years in the ground, one mature hosta clump divides into 8 to 12 completely viable new plants. At nursery prices, that is $60 to $150 worth of plants from one shovel and 30 minutes of your Saturday. You should never buy a hosta twice. Ever. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. Plant it, water it through the first season, and walk away. It will still be there long after you have stopped thinking about it. Plant 2. Sedum Autumn Joy. Plant 2 is Sedum Autumn Joy, and this is the one I point people to every single time they tell me they kill everything they touch. Sedum is a succulent perennial. It stores water in its thick, fleshy leaves. That one biological fact tells you everything you need to know about its relationship with neglect. Drought is not an emergency for this plant. It is just Tuesday. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Full sun to light shade. Poor soil, rocky soil, sandy soil, it does not care. In fact, rich, amended soil makes it floppy and weak. The worse the soil, the better this plant performs. That is one of the themes you are going to notice as we go through this list. But here is what makes autumn joy genuinely exceptional for the busy gardener. It does not give you one season of interest. It gives you 4. In spring, tight blue-green buds emerge with a sculptural, architectural quality that is already worth looking at. Through summer, the plant mounds up cleanly and does not flop in wind. In late summer, flat flower heads open to a dusty rose pink. By mid-autumn, they deepen to a warm brick red. And in winter, those dried flower heads hold their structure through snow and ice, turning a rich coppery bronze that looks deliberate and beautiful in a dormant yard. 4 complete seasons of visual interest. 1 plant. No intervention from you. Divide it every 3 to 4 years and 1 plant becomes 6. You will run out of places to put them before you run out of free sedum. Plant 3. Echinacea. Echinacea. Purple coneflower. This plant evolved on the American prairie, which means it was designed by nature itself to handle exactly the conditions most ornamental plants cannot survive. Poor soil, intense heat, extended dry spells, hard frost. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. It blooms from midsummer through September. Pollinators work it constantly. Bees, butterflies, monarchs. If you have ever wanted to see your yard come alive with insects in the best possible sense, a healthy stand of echinacea does that effortlessly. The variety I recommend for smaller spaces and containers is Echinacea magnus, perennial plant of the year 1998, and it earned that designation. The petals are horizontal and wide, which means the blooms look fuller and more dramatic than the standard species. The stems are stiff enough that wind does not flatten them. Now here is the detail most people get wrong with Echinacea. After the flowers fade, do not cut the seed heads off. Leave them. Those spiky brown cones are not dead plant material. They are a winter food source. American goldfinches and house finches will work those seed heads from October through February. You are not just growing a beautiful perennial. You are building a wildlife feeding station that requires 0 maintenance and 0 ongoing cost. Full sun. Poor to average soil. Water it when you plant it. Let the soil dry out completely between waterings after that, and then stop paying attention. This plant rewards neglect the way most plants reward careful tending. Plant 4. Daylily Estrella de Oro. Daylilies are hardy in zones 1 through 11. That is the entire country. There is no yard in America where a daylily will not grow, and that fact alone should tell you something important about this plant's relationship to difficulty. But standard daylilies have one limitation for the busy gardener. Most varieties bloom once, for a few weeks, and then spend the rest of the summer as plain green foliage. That is fine in a large border. In a small yard or a container, you need more. Stella de Oro was bred specifically to solve that problem. It is a compact, reblooming daylily. The foliage stays at about 12 inches. The golden yellow flowers come in waves that continue throughout the entire growing season. One flush blooms and fades. You remove the spent scapes by cutting them at the base, and within a few weeks another wave of buds is opening. That pattern continues from early summer until frost. What makes it remarkable in terms of pure toughness is this. It will handle poor soil, drought, and outright neglect in a way that would destroy most perennials. It does not need fertilizer. It does not need coddling. It does not need you to remember it exists. Water it consistently the first season while it establishes. After that, let the soil get dry, water deeply, let it dry again. That is the entire care program. It is not the most dramatic plant on this list. What it has is consistency. After everything a gardening season can throw at a yard, this plant just keeps blooming. One important note: daylilies are toxic to cats. Not to dogs, not to most other animals, but specifically to cats. If your cats spend time in your garden, choose something else from this list. Plant 5. Catmint Walker's Low. If you have ever bought a lavender plant, watched it slowly fall apart over one season, and quietly given up on the idea of having that soft purple haze in your garden, I need you to hear this. Catmint gives you the entire lavender look without a single lavender problem. Nepeta racemosa Walker's Low. Hardy in zones 4 through 8. It produces clouds of soft lavender blue flowers above aromatic silvery green foliage from late spring all the way through early autumn. For full months of color. The fragrance is clean and herbal. The mounding habit is natural and elegant. Here is what makes it exceptional for the no-time gardener specifically. Lavender demands perfect drainage, lean alkaline soil, dry summers, and zero humidity. If even one of those conditions is wrong, lavender dies. Catmint asks for none of that. It grows in average soil, average rainfall, average yards. It does not care about your humidity level or your soil pH. Deer avoid it completely because of the aromatic oils in the foliage. The scent is strong enough that deer evaluate it at the approach stage before they ever try to eat it and turn around. If deer have eaten your previous plantings down to the dirt, this is the plant you put in next. After the first bloom flush ends in early summer, cut the whole plant back by half. Wait 3 weeks. It comes back denser and fuller and produces a complete second wave of flowers that carries through September. 2 full bloom seasons from one plant in 1 year. The only work required is a single haircut. I want to stop here for one moment because if you have made it to plant 5 in this video, you are not a casual gardener. Casual viewers click away in the first minute. You are still here because you are genuinely tired of wasting time and money on plants that do not come back, and you want information that actually works in a real yard with a real schedule. That is exactly who this channel was built for. Hit the subscribe button right now. It is free. Takes 3 seconds. And next week's video goes even deeper into this topic. And if you are not subscribed, there is a real chance the algorithm simply does not show it to you. Subscribe now and then let us keep going because the plant after next solves a problem I hear about constantly. And I saved it specifically because it is the most underestimated perennial on this entire list. Plant 6. Salvia caridana. Salvia caridana is a true perennial salvia. Not the annual bedding plant you see in 6-packs at every garden center in May. This one comes back reliably year after year with a presence and upright character that sets it apart from almost everything else you can put in a container or border. Hardy in zones 5 through 8. Full sun. The stems are stiff and nearly black-purple, and the vivid violet-blue flower spikes that emerge from those dark stems simply do not move in wind. On a deck or patio that gets afternoon gusts, that distinction matters more than most people realize. This is the difference between a plant that looks spectacular all season and one that looks battered and broken by July. Caridana blooms first in late spring. Those intense violet spikes last 4 to 6 weeks. Then, if you cut the old flower spikes down to where you can see new growth emerging from the base, a task that takes about 10 minutes for an entire planting, it reblooms. Not a token second flush. A legitimate second full bloom in late summer that carries into September. 10 minutes of work. 2 full bloom seasons. Drought tolerant, heat tolerant, poor soil tolerant. The same evolutionary heritage that agastache and lavender carry, that lean, dry, rocky origin, is present in Caradonna, and it translates directly to a plant that is very difficult to neglect into failure. Do not fertilize it heavily. That pushes leafy growth at the expense of flowers, and the flowers are the entire point. Plant 7. Black-eyed Susan. This is the plant I told you about in the opening. The one that solves the impossible strip along your driveway. The fence line. The hot, dry, baking south-facing slope that has defeated everything you have ever tried. Rudbeckia fulgida goldsturm. Black-eyed Susan. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Vivid golden yellow petals around a deep chocolate brown center cone. The contrast is electric in a way that photographs honestly cannot capture. You have to see it in your own yard in late afternoon August light. It blooms from July all the way through October. Right when most summer gardens are exhausted and brown around the edges, goldsturm is just reaching its peak. While your neighbors' yards have given up by mid-August, yours is getting started. Here is what makes it genuinely exceptional for the no-time gardener. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously without any help from you. Underground rhizomes push outward each year, expanding the planting quietly on their own. Seed heads drop seeds that germinate the following spring into entirely new plants. You plant one in May. By year 3, you have a sweeping naturalized colony you never watered, never fertilized, never once touched. Leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter. Goldfinches will eat from them October through February. Your yard becomes a wildlife sanctuary that costs you nothing to maintain. As a North American native, this plant belongs in American soil. It needs less water, less fertilizer, and less attention than nearly any imported ornamental you can buy. Plant it once. It will reward you for decades. Plant 8. Euchera. Coral bells. And I want to be completely direct about something before we go any further. You do not grow Euchera for the flowers. Yes, it produces delicate, airy flower spikes in early summer. They are pretty. Pollinators appreciate them. But if flowers are what you are chasing with this plant, you are missing what makes it extraordinary. You grow Euchera for the foliage. And that foliage is where this plant becomes one of the most useful tools in a low-maintenance garden. The variety Palace Purple has leaves the color of deep burgundy wine, nearly black in certain light. Caramel produces warm amber and peach tones. Lime Ricky gives you a chartreuse that practically glows in a shaded corner. Obsidian is so dark it looks almost black with a faint metallic sheen. And unlike a flower that lasts 3 weeks, this color is present from the moment the plant breaks dormancy in spring to the moment it goes dormant in late autumn. Months of season-long color that requires nothing from you. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. Full shade to partial sun. Here is the practical detail most people overlook. That dense, low mound of foliage covers the soil surface completely, which means light cannot reach the ground beneath it to germinate weed seeds. You are getting natural weed suppression built directly into the plant's growth habit. No mulch purchase needed. No Landskapsfabrik. The plant does the work. Plant 9. Geranium rosen. Every container planting needs an edge. Something that spills over the rim and softens the sides and makes the whole arrangement look full and intentional rather than like a plant sitting in a pot. The problem is that every trailing plant most people reach for, Million Bells, sweet potato vine, trailing verbena, is an annual. Gone at the end of the season. Bought again next year. And the year after that. And the year after that. Geranium roseanne is the perennial answer to that problem. Hardy in zones 5 through 8. The flowers are violet blue with a white center, luminous and delicate, and they appear from late spring continuously, without pause, without a midsummer rest period, without deadheading required, all the way until the first hard frost. The trailing stems reach 18 to 24 inches over a season, and as they cascade over the rim of a container, they create exactly the overflowing, abundant look that takes a planting from adequate to genuinely impressive. Here is the biology behind why it blooms without stopping, and I want you to understand this because it explains why it demands almost nothing from you. Roseanne is a sterile hybrid, cannot produce viable seed. Every time a flower fades, the plant does not redirect energy toward seed production because it has no biological ability to complete that process. That energy stays in the system and goes directly back into producing more flowers. An unbroken loop of bloom that runs entirely on its own. No deadeading. No cutting back mid-season. No fertilizer manipulation to trigger rebloom. The plant's own biology does the work. Plant 10. Lavender Munstead. Lavender. And I know what some of you are thinking. You tried it. It got leggy. The center died out. It looked terrible by year 2 and you pulled it out. I hear this story constantly, and every single time I ask the same question. Was it in the ground or in a pot? And was the variety right for your climate? Lavender Munstead is the variety I recommend because it stays at 12 to 18 inches. Compact enough for a container, and it has better cold hardiness than most other lavender varieties. That matters in zones 5 and 6. In a terracotta or glazed ceramic container with sharp drainage, Lavender Munstead behaves like an entirely different plant than lavender struggling in heavy clay. It stays compact. It does not develop that dead center that makes in-ground lavender look shabby. It blooms longer because the container warms up faster in spring. The most important care instruction I can give you is this. Do not water on a schedule. Do not say, I water my containers every Tuesday. That is exactly how you kill lavender. Let the soil go completely dry. Then water deeply. Then let it go completely dry again. That dry-soak-dry cycle is what this plant evolved for in the Mediterranean basin, and it is the entire secret to keeping it alive. And the pest management benefit that almost nobody mentions. The volatile oils in lavender foliage, specifically linalool and linalool acetate, are deeply repellent to mosquitoes, aphids, and whiteflies. You are not just growing a fragrant plant. You are growing a living pest deterrent that requires no chemical inputs and no reapplication. Ever. Plant 11. Peonies. A peony planted correctly one time will live for 50 years. Some documented root systems have been blooming in the same spot for over 100 years. You are not buying a plant. You are planting an heirloom. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. The flowers are enormous, deeply fragrant, and dramatic in a way that no photograph ever fully captures. Soft pink, pure white, deep red, creamy coral. A single mature bush can produce 30 to 50 flowers in a single bloom flush. The bloom window is short 2 to 3 weeks in late spring. But after the flowers fade, the foliage stays a deep glossy green all summer long. The bush functions as a clean, structured shrub-like presence in your border for the entire season. It does not leave a gap when it finishes. It fills its own space handsomely. Here is the one detail that separates a lifetime of blooms from a lifetime of disappointment. The eyes, the small pink growth points on the root crown, must sit no more than 2 inches below the soil surface at planting. Plant them deeper than that and the plant will grow leaves and never once flower. 2 inches. That is the entire secret. Nail that one detail, and peonies bloom reliably every May for the rest of your life with almost no intervention from you. Dear resistant, drought-tolerant once established. Essentially zero maintenance after the first year beyond a handful of compost in early spring. If you plant one thing from this list, plant a peony. It will outlive everything else in your yard. Plant 12. Russian sage. I saved this one for last on purpose, because it is the plant that stops people in their tracks and makes them slow down in front of your yard. Russian sage. Botanical name Perovskia. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. From midsummer through fall. It sends up tall, airy, silver-white stems covered in tiny lavender-blue flowers that seem to float and shimmer in the air. The whole plant has a misty, cloud-like quality. It moves in the breeze. It catches afternoon light in a way that makes everything planted near it look more beautiful by comparison. And the care requirements are almost laughable in their simplicity. Full sun. Poor to average soil, and I mean that. It genuinely performs better in lean soil than rich soil. Excellent drainage. Drought-tolerant once established. Deer-resistant. Heat-tolerant. Wind-tolerant. Heavy fertilizing makes it floppy and strips it of its natural elegance. This plant wants to grow a little wild, a little tough. It does not want to be babied. In return for that deliberate neglect, it gives you 3 to 4 months of breathtaking color and texture from midsummer until hard frost. Pair it with Sedum Autumn Joy and Black-Eyed Susan for a combination that blooms from July through November with essentially zero maintenance. 3 plants. 1 Saturday of planting. 5 solid months of late-season color while every other yard in your neighborhood has given up. This is the plant people ask about every single time. And the answer is always one of the easiest things I grow. Before we close, I want to give you the single most practical piece of information in this entire video, because it will save you real money starting this season. The number 1 reason perennials fail in busy people's yards, even tough, nearly indestructible perennials like the ones we just covered, is the wrong potting mix or the wrong soil amendment. Most commercial potting mixes are formulated for annuals and vegetables. They retain water aggressively. Over 1 or 2 seasons they compact and break down, and they begin to hold moisture in a way that rots the roots of drought-tolerant perennials like lavender, salvia, and Russian sage. And then you replace the plant, and you buy more soil, and the cycle repeats. Here is what to use instead. For containers, 1 part peat moss or coconut coir, 1 part perlite, 2 parts finished compost. The perlite creates permanent air pockets that water flows through rather than accumulating in. For drought-tolerant perennials, lean the formula heavier on perlite, close to half the mix, because you want water moving through quickly after rain or watering. And here is the money-saving technique most people never question. At the end of the season, do not throw the potting soil away. That is an expensive habit. Old potting soil has lost structure and nutrients, but the base material is still usable. Remove 10 to 30% of the old compacted soil, replace it with 1 part fresh compost to 5 parts existing soil, add a small amount of slow-release organic fertilizer, and you have refreshed the mix for a fraction of the cost of replacing it entirely. Let me ask you something honest before you close this video. How much money have you spent at the garden center in the last 3 springs? Add it up. The flats of annuals that did not come back. The replacement plants. The bags of potting mix. The fertilizer. The pest spray. For most American homeowners who garden at all, that number is somewhere between $500 and $1,500 over 3 years. And a significant portion of it was spent replacing things that died. That is not gardening. That is a subscription service you never signed up for. The 12 plants we covered today break that cycle permanently. Hosta that transforms your darkest corner and divides for free. Sedum autumn joy that gives you 4 seasons of beauty from a single plant that loves neglect. Echinacea that feeds goldfinches all winter and blooms for months without you touching it. Daylily Stella de Oro that keeps blooming and blooming regardless of what you do or do not do. Catmint that gives you lavender's beauty without any of lavender's demands. Salvia caridana that stands straight through wind and heat and asks for a single haircut once a year. Black-eyed Susan that naturalizes into a sweeping colony without your involvement. Heuchera that suppresses weeds with its own foliage while delivering season-long color. Geranium rose and that cascades in violet blue from spring until frost without a single deadhead flower. Lavender Munstead that deters pests with its own chemistry and asks only for dry soil between waterings. Peonies that will still be blooming in that same spot when your grandchildren are grown. Russian sage that stops people in front of your yard and makes them ask what that plant is. One purchase. One planting. Years of return. That is the philosophy of this channel, and if this video gave you something real and practical and useful, the most powerful thing you can do right now is subscribe. It is free. It is here every week. And every video is built for exactly the kind of gardener who wants a beautiful yard without becoming a full-time laborer in their own backyard. Hit subscribe. Drop your state or zone in the comments below. I read every single one and it directly shapes what I cover next. And then go plant something. You have everything you need.